Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Aaron Feely. Another edition of White Sox Daily coming at you here as we've got a couple more little bits of news and tidbits from across the league pertaining to the Chicago White Sox. We'll go ahead and jump right on into it, starting off right off the bat. A lot of us in the White Sox fandom certainly feel like this rebuild is starting to really take off, was really going in a good direction toward the end of last season. The White Sox still ended up as a 100 loss team last year, going 60 and 102 with some mild improvement over the year before. I mean, it was pretty much a 20 win jump from the record setting, atrocious 2024 season. So 2025 was a little bit better to the Southsiders here. And especially that second half post All-Star break, things really started to pick up for the White Sox, especially as more young players, a lot of more young talent came up to that major league roster. Montgomery certainly helped. Lenine Sosa was obviously starting to really pick it up. Luis Robert got hot after the All-Star break. Of course, the two catchers, and Edgar Quero and Kyle Teal, certainly were helpful additions. Chase Mydroth was an assistance. I mean, there was a lot of good things to look forward to for the Chicago White Sox, and a lot of people expect that if that pace continues, and they will continue to roll off of that pace set in the second half of last year, and you just keep that going all the way through this next year, that they'll take yet another substantial jump in the win column. Right now, though, Vegas says slow your roll just a little bit. Currently, the betting odds line for the Chicago White Sox, the over-under set to 63.5 on Bet Online. If you go to Caesars Sportbooks, it's a little bit higher. It's 65.5 at the moment. But either way, that would only be a minimal at best improvement over last season, which I think would actually surprise a lot of White Sox fans. And if you're one of the ones like myself that foresees a fairly major jump in the standings in the win column this year over what they were able to obtain last season, I would certainly, you think it's easy money, go ahead and hop on in there before they shift, because right now they're projecting just 3 additional victories for the Chicago White Sox over last season. And I'd have to think that if the rebuild continues going in the right direction, certainly they're not going to get worse. So if they do get better, are they only going to get better within a couple of games? I would find that very difficult to believe. Obviously, there's always the chance of some progression, but not necessarily a massive jump. And, obviously, when you're talking about young players, it's not always as linear as you think it's going to be. Not everyone has a big step forward at the exact same time. Not everyone clicks at the exact same time. That's just kind of the nature of the beast of professional baseball and these elongated seasons. If some of these guys start to get hot, if some of these guys have big improved seasons, sometimes you can still end up with more losses than you think you should have, especially with a young team doesn't quite have the knowledge of what it takes to be a playoff caliber baseball team yet, where they just lose a few because 2 or 3 guys are hot, everyone else is cold, and then they just kind of end up circulating, and they take turns as to who's on fire, who's on a cold streak, and so on and so forth, and it just ultimately ends up evening itself out. So I think it'll be a little bit closer to this than maybe a lot of us are expecting, but I still expect it to be higher than this, hopefully substantially higher. I'd still say probably a safe bet that you can probably lock the Chicago White Sox in to about 70 to 75 wins this upcoming season. Unless maybe they even take a bigger jump than we're expecting, that would certainly be welcomed in the south side of Chicago. But let us know how your thoughts about it in the comment section below. Are you thinking this is easy money? Are you going to go hop on to Caesars Sportsbook right now, bet the over? Or do you think that that's a fair enough money line to set at this moment? Let us know in the comments section below as we head on to our second tidbit of the day, and that is Jason Benetti's promotion. After, of course, he was chased out of town here in Chicago, bit of controversy there. I've heard some White Sox fans say, oh, no, he left us. No. Jerry Reinsdorf did not like him, forced his way into Benetti's departure. This was absolutely always on Reinsdorf, always on the Chicago White Sox organization, pushing Benetti out because they didn't like Now, this was according to Benetti, but the statements were that Reinsdorf didn't like that he was eating on camera, didn't like his sense of humor, didn't like that he and Steve Stone would always go back and forth with the jokes. All of that, of course, utter nonsense. It was all perfectly likable, perfectly good stuff for the broadcasts. No idea why we took one of the top baseball play-by-play guys in the country and one of the top play-by-play guys in general. I work in play-by-play. I'm a broadcaster by trade myself. I keep up with a lot of what goes on in the broadcast landscape. I like to stay in tune into what a lot of the other top play-by-plays from across the country are doing. And Benetti was always a guy that I always kept tabs on, that I always was really intrigued by, a guy that I studied, a guy that I thought the world of as the Chicago White Sox play-by-play announcer. And they just got rid of him. They lost him despite him being a White Sox fan his entire life to a division rival in Detroit. And now they're losing him to the national spotlight. Of course, he's been doing college football a lot recently as well. He's been really solid for basketball. He's been a guy that started to spread his wings a little bit, and more power to him. He's really good at what he does. And now NBC has brought him on board as the top guy for their NBC broadcasts for pro baseball going forward. And you know what? Congratulations to Jason Benetti. He's a guy that absolutely deserves it. He's a guy I look up to as someone in this field. He's one of my personal opinion, one of the top 5 play-by-play voices in sports in general. Now, to me, that's a personal opinion because I just personally love him so much. But I think it's fair to say that even objectively speaking, he's one of the top guys. You have to rank him somewhere in that upper echelon, in that top tier of play-by-play guys in sports right now. And in baseball, I'd say he's number 1. He's my favorite guy. I know the Dodgers have a good one down there, but I personally think Jason Benetti is the top voice in baseball for me, and I'd love to hear what some of you guys' thoughts on it, some of the pure fan perspective on Benetti's voice and what he brings to the broadcasts, and his ascension now to the top voice in NBC after the White Sox couldn't keep him here in Chicago. Down in the comment section below. Let's get the conversation started again, and let's see if more people are still on the Jason Benetti hate train. I'd love to hear from both perspectives. Me personally, I always loved him, still do, and I think he'll be great in this NBC role. And then that moves us right on along to our next article here that we've got pulled up. This comes to us from SouthsideShowdown.com, a pair of White Sox players that they claim must be moved before spring training begins, and they've certainly got my eyebrow raised just a little bit. Obviously, the big one that everyone always talks about, Andrew Benintendi, the contract is a massive albatross for this unit. That one comes at no surprise. Lenyn Sosa being a must move certainly struck me as I was reading the article as a bit odd. A guy that obviously, as they point out, could be the odd man out in the infield rotation. You always need, though, that extra guy in there. You certainly can't expect that for 162 straight games, those same 4 players are going to line up and play every single one of them. And Lenyn Sosa is a guy with versatility. He can play all 4 of the infield positions. He's not tremendous defensively by any stretch of the imagination, but he's certainly serviceable at all 4 positions, which is a massive benefit, especially to a team like the White Sox that are looking for any warm bodies they can get. And on top of that, he led the team in home runs a season ago. Now, that wasn't a massive milestone to clear. It was not a prolific power unit here in Chicago by any means, but he was 22 home runs, the leader on the team. A guy that even if he is just going to be coming off the bench this season, if not starting a good, decent chunk of games at second base, Mydroth obviously the better defensively of the two, but Lenyn Sosa, for my money, the better hitter. Mydroth gets on base a little bit better. Lenyn Sosa, though, not a guy that had a tremendous strikeout problem last year. A guy that made good contact. He just didn't walk much. And the sustainability of that approach can certainly be debated back and forth. But as far as what we actually got in 2025, he was a guy that made good contact, made good power, didn't walk all that much. He actually hit more home runs than he had walks, which is insane to think about. But he did. I mean, he hit the ball over the fence. He hit the ball in general. He was really solid offensively. I think trading him just to trade him, just to get rid of him, I mean, for no real benefit, for no real return, I think would be absolutely silly. You guys can let me know if you disagree in the comment section below, but that's kind of my take on that situation. Andrew Benintendi, sure, whatever, the contract's bad. You still don't have any replacements ready to go. You're still looking for a starting right fielder. You might have to just keep him for at least another year. Contract and all, just because you absolutely can't afford to lose any more of your outfielders right now. But at least that one makes sense because of the contract. Lenyn Sosa, not so sure about that one, but we'll move right on along here and talk about, we kind of were mentioning him a few days ago, but one of the outfield options, MLB Pipeline dropped an article recently listing George Wolkow as a potential breakout prospect, a potential breakout candidate for the 2026 season, a guy that has played mostly in low A to this point for the Chicago White Sox, but a guy that we certainly expect to make the jump to high A here soon. And then, according to MLB Pipeline, they are projecting him to make a full run through the minor league system for the White Sox and potentially end the season in Triple A, continuing to climb. He's only 20 years old. This is his third year in the White Sox system. You could certainly foresee that this could be a year for him to take a big jump. We talked about some of his stats in a previous video earlier on in the week. 11 home runs, back-to-back seasons in those kind of condensed minor league seasons where they play significantly fewer games. Wouldn't be utterly shocking to think that Wolkow could have a massive climb if he starts off the year really hot down there in lower A. But that'll do it for today's news. I've been Aaron Feely once again. We thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.